Hey everybody, thank you for joining us today on Step Into Recovery. I'm Elizabeth Rain. Today I have with me Brent Cutforth. Today we're going to just chat a little bit about kind of what got me here and where I've been. I like to go on my page once a week and talk to my viewers and see what you guys want to hear about and what you guys think will help you getting through your week, maybe getting through a difficult period in your life, whatever it may be. And you guys have spoken and I've heard you, and my viewers have expressed to me that they wanted to hear more about where I came from. They wanted to know that I actually, I'm speaking from a place of experience, and that I'm speaking from a place that's coming from the heart and not just books. I'm not another child counselor that has no kids. So I've invited Brent here to come on the show with me today in case any questions might pop into your head, or whatever the case may be, so that we can chat a little bit and discuss what got me here.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate helping you out on your show like that. That's great.
I love having you here.
Oh, no problem. So what did get you to this point, from where you were to doing the TV show right now?
I started off my life really early in addiction, and I started off my life as a food addict. And I can actually recall my mother getting very angry with me one time. When my mom got married, she made these cute little Hershey Kiss things, and she gave them to everybody. It was her wedding favors, and between me and my sister, we stole 14 pounds of chocolate out of her closet and ate it, and hid all the wrappers under her bed. It was a disaster. It was a disaster. But I started off my life as a food addict, and not really dealing with a lot of things. And growing up with a single mom made things a lot harder for me to kind of deal with and get through. And I didn't maybe necessarily get the same kind of attention that a normal teenager would get, that a normal young child would get, whatever, because my mom was busy working her butt off every day, every hour of every day, to make sure we had enough. I have a younger sister who's got cerebral palsy. She's amazing. She's the most amazing person I've ever met in my whole life. And having a child with special needs, having 3 kids and no help, she busted her butt every day to ensure that we had what we needed. And so I maybe didn't get, really good help learning coping skills at an early age. So then when I got into high school and I got into junior high and whatever else, I had no coping skills. And on top of having no coping skills, then I had, all of this confusion as to my and puberty and all of these other things. And I really disliked myself. And I've come to realize now that what that was it was basically a cycle of self-abuse. And so through my cycle of self-abuse, I became a food addict, an alcoholic, and then
So with a food addict, there's people that love food and they eat all the time, but what does it mean to be a food addict per se?
For me personally, it was like I always just needed the comfort of having them there. I always needed to have, I would get stressed out and I would eat. If I didn't have food, then my anxiety grew. As long as I was there, I was enjoying my food, I could focus on the flavor of the food. My mom would bake cookies and I would go steal, a dozen cookies out of the cupboard. But it was it was there and it was in the moment, and it was focusing on the flavor of the food, and the chocolate and the warm squishiness of the cookies, or whatever, as opposed to focusing on everything else going on around me. So it was, my mom locked a lot of cupboards when we were kids.
Wow, yeah, and that as a kid, that can be very, stressful too, having a food addiction, because you're eating, oh no, now what's going to happen? I'm going to get all sugared up, which doesn't usually happen, or maybe, there's weight gain involved, whatever, right?
There was a lot of weight gain involved, and through the weight gain, I came to dislike myself more.
Okay.
Which just compounded the issue, because then I was in junior high, and I was overweight, and I didn't even realize I was addicted to food. Like, it didn't dawn on me that I was a food addict until a couple months ago when I was getting sober, and I was like, oh, okay, hang on a second, no, that makes sense, actually. And so then being in junior high and being a food addict and, then being obese on top of that, and I was, it gave me a lot of self-esteem issues, and that just compacted the issue and made it worse. I had so many problems with my cycle of self-abuse, and it didn't even dawn on me that I was in one until about 6 months ago. And being in that cycle of self-abuse and being stuck in it, not being able to get out of it, and not being able to recognize that within myself and say, hey, I gotta stop beating myself up over this all the time. It made things worse, and pretty soon food wasn't enough. And then I was stealing alcohol out of my mom's fridge, and pretty soon that wasn't enough, and then I was skipping classes to go get high with friends, and then I just dropped out of school altogether because it was less anxiety to be at my friend's house doing drugs, not thinking about anything, than it was to be sitting in a classroom, and regardless of whether or not I was actually doing my work, I was still beating myself up. You're sitting there in class, you're doing a math problem, you're like, I suck at this, I'm terrible at this.
Right.
And so that cycle of self-abuse led me to become a serious drug addict and a serious alcoholic, and whatever else over the years. And about 6 months ago, I was living in Coaldale, and I have 6 kids, and they're all in care right now. And they're there because of me. About 2 years ago, I'd totally given up my will to live. Didn't want to be alive anymore. Trashed the house I was living in. Our poor producer's brother was my victim. And I'd totally given up my will to live. And I see this meme on Facebook all the time. People post it all the time, and it says, I don't understand how somebody could look at their child's face and for that to not be enough for them to make better choices. And for somebody who's been in a cycle of self-abuse, I know, I've been there, and I get it. And it's not that you look at your child's face and that they're not enough. It's that you look at their face and you feel like you're not. And you look at this most beautiful, perfect person you just created, and you see the love they have for you that you don't even have for yourself. You know that they deserve the whole world and the stars and the moon and the sky, and that you can't give it to them. And knowing that is painful, and it causes you to get further into that cycle of self-abuse. You beat yourself up over it really bad, to a point where you dislike yourself so much you don't even want to live anymore. I finally lost my kids when I attempted to commit suicide, and they've been in care since. And 6 months ago, I was at a visit with my kids, and one of my children broke down and started crying. And I'm not a teary crying person. I'm not a, wear your emotions on your sleeve kind of person. I'm not that person at all. Or at least I wasn't before. I was very protective of me before, and I was sitting in this visit, and my daughter started crying. She had tears pouring down her face, and she climbed into my lap, and pretty soon all my kids were sitting in my lap and crying, and I couldn't help it. And I broke down. I started crying, and my daughter looked at me. She said, "Mom, are you crying?" I said, "Of course I'm crying, Michaela. I miss you guys so much it hurts, and if I could have you home right now with me today, I would." And my daughter, who is 7 years old and has the most beautiful little heart I've ever seen, wiped the tears off my face, and she said, "It's okay, Mom, it's not your fault." And it blew my mind that my 7-year-old daughter had a better grasp of the concept of addictions than me. And not only that, she loved me for no reason other than she could.
Mm-hmm. And that's important with kids. Kids are very resilient in a lot of things, right? You know, I mean, they can go through the worst possible situations and come out of it looking at the world like, wow, you know, it's still an okay place, right? You know, and in a lot of cases, people sometimes get into that problem too because the world puts a lot of pressure on us. You have to look a certain way, you have to, you know, act a certain way, you have to, you know, be a certain way to get accepted, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're not, that can lead to a lot of those things too.
It definitely did not help my cycle of self-abuse, and not knowing that I was in a cycle of self-abuse made it that much worse. It made, you know, it made every day painful to live, and I was constantly beating myself up over stuff. And I would see my kids, and I would know that they were awesome. They're awesome kids. Mm-hmm. And I would feel like, you know, I wasn't enough. Like, I couldn't give them what they wanted. I couldn't give them the things that I felt like they deserved. And I feel like they deserve the whole world, and maybe I'm biased, but it was feeling like they were enough and knowing that in that moment I wasn't.
Mm-hmm. So you have 6 kids. How old are you?
I'm gonna be 29.
29.
Next
okay.
week on Saturday.
Okay. So you've been through a lot in your short life, and a lot of people out there, maybe they haven't been through as much, but have been through similar. And that's important because when you've had that much issues to face and that much to overcome, a lot of people will be able to really relate because, well, you lost your kids, you know, you were, you know, every type of addiction, you know, and that's the tough part, is coming through that. What is from food to alcohol to drugs? What made you, at your lowest point, start in the path of recovery?
At my lowest point was during that visit, and when I was in that visit with my kids that day, I was high, and I was drunk, and I was not coping with life at all, and I was trying to, I guess, just find a way to escape everything. And I knew that we were going to have a rough visit that day because Child and Family Services was supposed to come in and supervise, and the stress just got to me, and I went out and I finally broke down. I went out and picked up my drug of choice, and for some reason, I was sitting there on my couch, and for some reason, my high school friend's words popped into my head. And I've talked about this before. A friend of mine in high school told me one day, you know, surviving is okay, but you got to learn to love yourself so you can thrive. And I don't know why, but I got the urge to write it down, and I folded it up and put it in my pocket. And then that, on top of my daughter, that was enough that it just tipped me right over that edge, and I started running. And my whole life, really, I've been running. I've had a suitcase packed since I was 14.
Really? Wow.
Always, because I ran away from home, and in the event that I should need to run again, I had my suitcase already packed. Even when I was married, and I had a house, and I had a husband, and I had all these things going for me, I always had that suitcase under my bed, full of clothes, full of, makeup, deodorant, whatever I might need, in case I should, need to run again. And I didn't know what I was running from, and I kept running and running and running, and every 6 months I would get uncomfortable, and I'd say to my husband, let's move. He'd be like, why? Because I want to. Let's move. I'm uncomfortable here. Let's go. And finally that day, that tipped me over the edge, and I went seeking this friend of mine from high school. And that person was out in BC, and I was like, you know what? I've always wanted to see the ocean, and I had always built, the ocean up to be something amazing that I was going to do.
Right.
It was going to be great.
Right.
Yeah,
I think that's what you everybody
wonderful.
has. Yeah.
And I started running, and I kept running until I couldn't run anymore. And I got all the way out to Vancouver, and I was sitting on this beach, and I had worked this moment up to be this big thing in my mind. And there, I got out there, and it was water and sand And then I was grumpy because the ocean was loud and there was sand in my shoes. and I just knew that I was going to track it into the house with me when I got back. And this moment that I had worked up to be this big thing in my head, because I had no coping abilities, I had no communication skills, I got out there and there was nothing. It just fizzled. And then all of a sudden I was angry because I had worked it up to be this big thing, and then I wasn't as excited as I thought I'd be.
Right. Yeah. Big letdown, right?
It was like a tragic scene out of a bad movie. I was like kicking the dirt, and I threw my backpack, and I was like crying, and I sat there, and that's all I did. And I just sat there and I stared at the ocean for like 20 minutes, half an hour, and finally I was going over some recovery thoughts in my head. I don't even know why. I have this book from Dr. Wayne Dyer, and I love it. Love it. It's Everyday Words of Wisdom, and I read a lot of his stuff, and I live by a lot of his stuff because it's amazing. But one thing that my whole family lives by now, that we practice daily, that I actually picked up in recovery, and actually from my grandfather, was gratitude will change your attitude. And I wanted to be happy. It wasn't that I wanted to be high. It wasn't that I wanted to be drunk.
Yeah.
It was that I wanted to just genuinely be happy. So I was like, gratitude will change your attitude. Let's start practicing this.
Yeah.
And I put that into practice. And through that, and then practicing some of Dr. Wayne Dyer's stuff, in one of the books I actually read, it says that if you recall 3 things you're grateful for every day for 21 days, then you start to change the pathways in your brain, and you'll actually start rebuilding a healthy, positive mindset.
Oh wow, that's interesting concept. Yeah, for sure.
It was hard, and my youngest son, his father, helped me with it. I talked to Alex the one day on the phone, and I'm like, okay, let's do this. Let's just try this and see if it helps. And he ducked out before we were done, and he was like, this is not my thing. But I started practicing positivity in all things.
Well,
the
good.
Power of positivity. There is power in it. And through practicing positivity in all things, I removed myself from negative conversations. I removed myself from drama and conflicts, and I don't practice anything that I find will be detrimental to mine or my family's well-being. Video games, if I find, like, my stepson, he's so adorable. I love him so much. He is so worked up over video games. So worked up over them. To the point where we've actually said, like, if you start yelling, the game goes off. I'm like, that is poor sportsmanship. We're not even going to go there, man. And through practicing positivity in all things in my life, I've come to a point where I can look at a situation and I can find the good in it. Another one of the things that I live by is in one of Dr. Dyer's books, it says that everything in life is good. It doesn't matter what it is. Everything in this life is good. Everything in this universe is good, whether you choose to see it or not. And everything is good because everything is either, a success. You've done it, you've completed it, or it's a chance to learn. And if you can learn from your mistakes, you learn from your failures, you can pick yourself back up, well, then it's a success anyways, because you just learned something. You just educated yourself right there.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true.
And that's life skills for, the next time you attempt it.
Yeah. So with the alcohol and the drugs that you were addicted to, was there one of choice that you did, or just everything?
For me personally, for a long time I did a lot of cocaine, and it was more just stuff. Like the numb. I didn't want to feel anything. I didn't want to talk to anybody, and I got sober when I had my son. Not off of alcohol, but off the drugs.
Okay.
And the day I found out that I was pregnant with my son, my whole life changed. And I was like, okay, I'm ready. I did the drug addict thing, let's do the mom thing now. And I had my son, and it was just me and him at first until I met my husband. But he was everything I needed.
Mm-hmm.
He was absolutely everything I ever needed in the whole world. And all of a sudden I had this most perfect little person who loved me. And I never really felt like I fit in with my family. I never really felt like I had any friends at school. I was very much a isolated person. A TED Talk I watched recently actually explains that the leading cause of addiction is isolation. And all of a sudden I had this little person in my life, and I wasn't isolated anymore. I had a friend. And I had this most perfect little person that loved me for no reason other than he could.
Yeah.
And that was enough for me to get off the drugs. But being stuck in that cycle of self-abuse, I was still beating myself up, and I still didn't feel like I was enough. And then I had my daughter, and apparently I have an addictive personality, so, I had 4 more kids after that.
There you go.
And I was addicted to their love, is what it was.
Mm-hmm.
I am addicted to my kids' love, and I have no problem admitting that. I absolutely love spending time with them, finger painting, going swimming, stuff like that, because their love is enough for me in most times. When I'm not loving myself, I can go see my kids, and I talk to them, and my daughter now, she's learning big words.
Yeah.
She said
Oh,
it.
is she? Oh, wow.
She's learning big words.
Yeah.
She told me she loves my new confidence.
Oh, there you go.
And so she's talking to me a couple of weeks ago, and we've started practicing complimenting each other now, because it brings you up a little bit. It brings your ego up.
Yeah.
And it helps to bring you out of, a cycle of self-abuse.
Right.
Which most people will never even recognize that they're in one.
Yeah.
I beat myself up for years. I hated myself.
Yeah.
No reason, just because I could.
Yeah.
And that was all through high school and junior high and elementary school, and then I had my son, and I felt like there were times where I wasn't enough. I couldn't provide this, I couldn't provide that, and then I met my husband, and and that made it worse because I loved him so much, and I didn't feel like it was enough for him either. And
so, what was the first biggest step you had to take to dig yourself out of the hole?
I think that the biggest thing I did, which I didn't even realize until afterwards, was just removing myself from the situation. 100%, which hurt. That was the most painful day of my life.
Because that probably included everybody that you associated with in the past and everything.
My kids.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I knew that I wasn't healthy enough to be around them, and knowing that you're not enough in that moment is.
Wow, that's really hard. Yeah.
It was painful, and I knew that I needed to leave. I knew I needed to walk away from the situation and pull myself together, and I knew that was going to hurt them.
Yeah, that's a tough thing to deal with when you're trying to get yourself back in a good place, and then you have to leave what brings you love. That's always tough.
Well, and on top of that, people are very judgmental.
That's
and
true.
So when I left, I had a lot of people messaging me saying things like, "Oh, I'm glad you're having fun on your vacation," and that wasn't even it at all. Like, when I left, that was me going to a place where I could start healing, where I could start pulling myself together, where I could focus on me and making sure that I was doing what I needed to, so that when I got up the next morning, I wouldn't totally hate myself.
Yeah, they always say a person, sometimes they'll take a sabbatical and then go find themselves. In that case, in a lot of cases, sometimes you have to. You have to go and, you know what, I got to figure things out for myself before I can, get back into their lives and then into mine. And that's a tough thing to do. And that's, it shows the character that you have, because to be able to do that, instead of just spiraling into, the abyss and even death, right, which you tried to do.
I did
right?
try, yeah.
And that's, it's good that you didn't, because now you are getting past those things, which is really great.
It was a struggle at first, like being an addict for the majority of my life. I started drinking when I was 14, so that really eliminated me having to deal with feelings and emotions, especially going through puberty. Most people deal with that stuff in their teenage year. I'm going through my teenage years right now because I didn't have to deal with that stuff. I've always either been on drugs or alcohol. And not ever having to deal with those emotions, not having to deal with the emotional chaos of puberty because I was drunk and high. And then all of a sudden, after 14 years of suppressing those feelings, my body was like, hey, we're sober now, and I don't know what this is, but I don't like it. And I still struggle today. Like, when I hit my 60-day mark, I was out in Kelowna, and Kelowna was actually, that's my home.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never really felt like I had a place that I could call home up until I went out there. And when I went out there, I built friendships, and I met all these people that didn't know me, that didn't know who I already was, who they didn't know the terrible things I had done. They didn't have a prior judgment of me, and they just wanted to be my friend because they liked the person that I was in that moment.
Yeah.
And I changed my name when I went out there.
Oh, did you? Wow.
I did, yeah. My on March 20th, I submitted documents to change my name to Elizabeth. And I wrote letters on my old Facebook page. One from my old name to my new name, just saying, hey, I've kind of destroyed our reputation, so leave me here. But you go fix yourself, you've got this. And then one from my new name to my old name saying, you know what, I'm going to forgive you because I have to.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing. You have to forgive yourself. Yeah. You have to let go of that.
Yeah.
And I left those letters there. And if you go on my old Facebook page, they're still there. I used to be one of the most hated people in Lethbridge. And if you would actually go on to Swap and Buy and talk to people and say, hey, can you tell me about this person? They would be like, oh, she's so terrible. She's so awful. Stay away from her. And that made my self-abuse situation so much worse.
Yeah.
But I went and built this little family out in Kelowna. And through having these people around me to pick me up when I was feeling down, it started to bring me up out of that cycle of self-abuse. And pretty soon, the things that they were saying to me that I maybe didn't necessarily believe about myself, like the compliments and, hey, you did really good with this, and we're really proud of you for that. That started to bring me back up out of that cycle of self-abuse. And pretty soon I got to a point where I could recognize with myself that I was self-abusing. Yeah,
good, yeah. And that's good. And sometimes it takes that. And society is judgmental to the extreme anyhow. And, that ends up feeding a lot of this stuff. A person has negative views of themselves. They judge you, or you come out of a very difficult situation or a difficult life, and, oh, that person's bad news because of this. But instead of understanding, they decide to judge because it's easier than understanding. It takes less work to judge somebody and look at them and go, oh, yeah, that's what they are, instead of understanding why they got to that point. And it's pretty sad, right? It happens with everything. And, one thing that we need to do as a society, as a whole, is to stop judging people.
Absolutely.
And start being kind and understanding. And then that kindness will come. You can, treat people with kindness. You can do an act of kindness to somebody because, you understand their struggle and you want to help them. And I think that's the important thing, is not judging people.
I very much live my life now with the intention of not placing judgment on other people. And if I find myself in a situation where I'm about to argue with somebody, or I'm feeling frustrated over something, I quite literally take the time to remove myself from my own head and look at this person's situation and everything going on around them and say, okay, what is it that this person is feeling? And regardless of what I think their fault is in that situation, even if somebody is at fault for something, I do not accuse them, nor do I make them apologize. If you can't notice your own faults, you're not going to fix them.
Yeah, true.
But I always make an effort in any situation to apologize for my own faults. And I've rebuilt a lot of friendships since I've come back, and I've made a lot of good connections with people since I've come back. And when I talk to people, they don't recognize me. I've lost a ton of weight because I'm not a food addict anymore. And so people don't recognize me, and being healthy and, not being a drug addict now and not being a food addict, not being an alcoholic.
So you just drink water then, or? I'm just kidding.
Pretty much.
I'm just kidding.
I'll talk to people and I'll say, like, people will message me and they'll say, do I know you? And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm so-and-so. And they're like, whoa, you don't even look like you anymore. And I was like, oh, somewhere. And I'll apologize to people and I'll say, hey, you know what? Thank you for loving me and being my friend in this moment, but also for loving me as I was before, because I couldn't have been an easy person to care about. I couldn't have been an easy person to love. I couldn't have been an easy person to want to hang on to. And they did regardless. Like, I have people in my life, there is no reason that they should still be there. I have abused the crap out of them. They're still here.
Well,
they're still loving me anyway.
That tells you something, that's the type of friendship. When someone has your back like that, no matter what, you can go through, the worst situation, maybe be abusive to them or whatever, and they still have your back and are your friend. That's the type of friend you want in life, because they'll tell it like it is too, right?
My biggest supporter is probably my mom.
Yeah.
And we did not get along very good when this started. And I said some hurtful things to her, and I was not very nice about it. But regardless of everything I've been through, and regardless of where I'm at in life now, or where I was before, she's always stood up for me to everybody around her, which I can't imagine is easy. Like, being stuck between your family and your child, that has got to be an absolutely painful place to be. And regardless of that, she's always stood up for me. She's always, defended me, and she's always said, she's got this, give her a chance. My mom has always seen that in me, even when I didn't see it in myself.
Yeah, that's good.
And I definitely abuse the crap out of her.
Yeah.
But it's recognizing that within yourself and saying, hey, these are my faults and I'm sorry. A lot of people, when you actually address the issue and you tell them, like, this is what I did wrong, and this is why I'm apologizing for it, a lot of people right away are like, holy cow, like, I didn't even think about it that way, and I'm so sorry. And even my ex-husband and I, we're like best friends now, which is weird. I got talking to him, and we had like a very toxic relationship. By the time the police finally pulled us apart, we literally had knives at each other's throats, and we were trying to kill each other. And the police came into our house. I still have a scar on the side of my neck right here. But we were quite literally trying to kill each other. And it was incredibly toxic. And when I got sober and I was able to sit down and say, hey, this is where I made my mistake, and I'm sorry, and this is how I want to fix it. I got talking to my ex-husband one day, and I said to him, I don't understand why we fought so much. Now I don't. Like, I remember us fighting a lot, but now I don't understand why. And he said, I don't believe in love, which kind of struck me as odd. But my ex-husband's from Nigeria. In places like Nigeria, they don't believe in, I guess, marriage. Like, they believe in arranged marriages. You marry somebody when it's mutually beneficial for both parties.
Right. Okay.
And when we got talking, I told him if I was ever going to marry him again, I was going to do so honestly, and I was going to earn that. And when we got talking again, we started having communications, and I was trying to earn a friendship back with him, because at one point we were friends, and I wanted to get back to that point, for our kids mostly. And I got talking to Vic on the phone one day, and he said, I don't believe in love. And it dawned on me that they believe in arranged marriages, and that's got to be awfully confusing. That has got to be incredibly confusing, having people tell you that love is not a thing, it does not exist, there's no such thing as love, and feeling it and knowing it's there, but being told it doesn't exist. That's got to be incredibly confusing. And I said, "What? Like, explain to me why you don't believe in love." He said, "I didn't have love growing up." I said, did you have a roof over your head and food on your table? And he said, yes, but my mom never told me she loved me. I said, your mom busted her butt. I mean, I can't imagine things are cheap in Nigeria, and it's, you know, it's a poor country. It's a foreign country. I said, your mom busted her butt to put food on your table, a roof over your head, clothes on your back. That is love. And he was like, yeah, but she never told me she loved me. And I was like, I would imagine for your mom growing up that was a very confusing thing. And you're lucky enough that you have people around you that can explain that to you, that can help you out with that can say, hey, you know, like, this is what you're experiencing, and this is why. You're lucky enough you have those people. Your mom didn't have that, and I would imagine that after so many years of going through that, having it there and not knowing what it was, and not being able to associate the word with the feeling, that would completely mess somebody up mentally and emotionally. And he went like dead quiet, and he was like, wow, you actually just made me mad at myself. And I was like, mad at yourself for what? And he was like, I never even thought about it that way, and now I'm sad that I ever had those feelings towards my mom.
Well, what a lot of people don't realize is that comes from a lot of cultures. It's not just maybe in Nigeria, but even, you know, some of the old school European, the way that they are in their culture. The father, in some cases, never said he loves you because, you know, it's not a manly thing, and that's kind of where that comes from, right? But, you know, expressing love in words, say, you know, I love you, is sometimes maybe doesn't mean as much as the action itself. So the effort that you put in is what shows how much you love somebody. It's the effort, not necessarily just the words. And some people don't realize that, and they need to, right?
My best friend, of like going on 10 years now, just said I love you to me for the very first time the other day. And I'm trying to desensitize my friends and family to the word love. I tell everybody I love them now because, you know, we're going to make this the thing. We're going to love out loud because that's what we should be doing.
Yeah.
And everybody's so sensitive to love. As soon as you say I love you to somebody, most people are like, whoa, hold up. I'm not sure I'm feeling that right now. And they think you're talking about sexual or romantic, right? You can't just say to somebody, I love you, and have them not react to that anymore. Because as soon as you say to one of your friends, I love you, they're like, hold up, you know, we need to slow things down a little bit. And I'm like, no, I mean, like, I love you as a person. But my best friend just said it to me the other day, and not once in the period of, you know, like the almost 10 years that I've known this person, have I ever questioned that they loved me. But hearing it was almost weird to me because I'm more used to seeing it from that person.
Right,
And knowing that that person, regardless of anything else in my life, they're always going to be there for me. They're always going to love me unconditionally. I can actually remember being pregnant with my daughter, and I was very emotional when I was pregnant, and I broke up with my husband for the duration of my pregnancy because I was mad at him. So I wasn't with him at the time, and this friend of mine came over and he kept bringing me cactus juice. And at the time, this was a very new friendship, so I was like, I didn't know what was going on, and there's this crazy hippie bringing me cactus juice, and what's going on. And my mom and I got to talking the other day, and I was like, yeah, I think this person loves me. And she goes, you're just noticing this now? I'm like, well, okay, well, this is strange. And and then I got talking to my girlfriend afterwards, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that this person loves me. And she goes, yeah. And I'm like, okay, am I the only person that did not see this before now? But being sober now, I'm recognizing it, and I'm seeing that all of their actions, all of their behaviors, everything that they did up to this point, that was love.
Right.
It wasn't. Maybe that wasn't in words, but it was like everything they did was because they cared about me. They cared about my well-being. Right. You know, they wanted to see me healthy. They wanted to see me happy, and seeing that I was stuck in that cycle of self-abuse, and you know, maybe not treating my body the best I could.
Yeah. And sometimes we don't see that, and you know, they do and stick with us, which is really great, which shows their love. So, if you could give advice to anyone out there that is going through, you know, any addiction, whatever it is, whether it's, you know, you've been through several, right? All together at the same time. If you could give anyone advice out there, what would it be? What would you say to them?
Don't be afraid to love or accept love. I had a very hard time accepting love when I came into my recovery phase, and even now I still struggle sometimes, and I have amazing people around me that love me probably more than I love myself yet. And they are incredibly good at picking me up when I'm down. You also have to not be afraid to love yourself.
Mm.
And that is the most important thing, because when you love yourself enough that you want to make sure that when you lay your head down on the pillow at the end of the day, there's nothing left in your brain for you to beat yourself up over. When you love yourself enough to want to take care of your body, to want to take care of your mind, when you want to be happier, then things start to come together. I didn't have any friends in high school. I didn't fit into my family growing up, and mostly I think that was just because I didn't like myself. And in not liking myself, I created a person that nobody else liked either.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
And that, I think that was a huge factor in my addiction, was just that I didn't like me.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like me. I was in a cycle of self-abuse, and I didn't know how to love me. And when other people would come along that would see good things in me, that loved me more than I loved myself, I would get uncomfortable with that. And I would have to walk away because I didn't understand why they loved me. I was like, well, no, go away from me. Like, I'm the wrong person for you to care about. Leave me alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I pushed a lot of people away. And I burnt a lot of bridges intentionally. And, I let out some family secrets to some family members that probably didn't need to know them, and intentionally tried to destroy people's lives with things that just didn't matter anymore, things that are irrelevant now.
Right.
Like, regardless of how bad it might have been in the moment, it's in the past.
Yeah.
It's in the past, and your past can't hurt you anymore.
Yeah. True.
So if you leave your past in the past, you walk away from it, you let it go, then why drag it along with you? Why beat yourself up over it more? And
That's true, yeah.
And when I would get into that, into that phase where I would start hating on myself again, I'd start pushing people away again. I was like, no, you can't like me because I don't even like me, and because I don't know how to like me, you're not allowed.
Right. So, from where you were to where you are now, you're doing the show and everything, where would you like to be? Like, what would you like to accomplish in the next 2 to 5 years?
I actually would like to go back to school this fall. I'm going to be, and I haven't gotten my letter yet, but they did say there was seats left, so I'm waiting on it for interview calls.
That's good.
I'm going to take psychology and sociology. I've just completed my life coach training and my nutrition coach training,
Good
which
for you.
I'm very excited about.
Very good.
I'm working on having my book published, and then my 20 girls out in Kelowna are all writing me, I guess, little mini biographies. And I want to start a new wave of pre-recovery instead of recovery. I want to get people recovering from basic life crap before they ever need drugs or alcohol or, like food or whatever the case may be. Because a lot of people, that it's just a basic lack of coping and communication skills. And when you have no coping and communication skills, you can't deal with life. You don't like you as a person. You don't know how to cope with that. You can't pull yourself out of it. It's a very, very vicious cycle to be in. And you will actually devaluate yourself to a point where, you don't take care of your kids and they get taken away. Or you devaluate yourself to a point where, you feel like you're completely worthless. And that's just basic lack of coping skills. People go through, rough divorce and they beat themselves up over it.
Yeah.
If somebody gets into a car accident and, they maybe were at fault, they'll beat themselves up over it. And people have tons of things that they need to recover from that maybe they don't necessarily know how to. and I very much look forward to doing this. I'm going to take my book. I'm going to use it, in unison with my psychology major, with my life coach training, with my nutrition coach training, and I'm going to start a recovery program for people who maybe aren't drug addicts and alcoholics yet. Maybe you haven't reached that point, but if you're getting to that point, you're like, hey, I might go to the casino tonight, check it out, because I'm sad and maybe that's what I need to work out in my life. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Don't do that out of sadness. If you're going to the casino, go to the casino for fun.
Yeah.
Go for bachelorette parties.
Yeah.
Go for a weekend.
Or just to hang out and have fun. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And I think that we simply don't have enough programs for people who aren't addicts, who aren't alcoholics, who aren't,
good point, yeah.
who aren't coping with food.
Yeah, yeah.
Who aren't stealing 14 pounds of Hershey Kisses out of
That's
their
a lot of
mom's
Hershey Kisses.
Oh my goodness, it was
That's a
so
lot.
many.
Yeah. Well, that's great. You've got lots of great goals, great things that you're working at, and that's awesome. To see somebody pull themselves up out of that. And thank you for having me on your show today to be able to, help everyone out there watching, all our listeners on Jess FM and watchers to really understand you as a new host and understand where you come from. Maybe they can, take some of that and, be able to get out of the situation that they're in. And plus, you've been through it, you've lived through it, so you have some credibility there, right? So that's the main thing, too.
A lot of these programs that you get into, when you get into them, they, in their guide that they have, it'll say the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop using, which means you already have to be an addict. You already have to be an alcoholic. And they have closed meetings for people who aren't addicts, who aren't alcoholics. And if we could bring people in to these meetings who haven't maybe made it there yet, who haven't, gone through that yet, and show them that, hey, I have been there and I have done that, and it's not worth the t-shirt. The t-shirt fades quickly, I promise. And show them that, then I feel like we could tackle the problem of addiction before it's ever a problem.
Yeah. That's excellent. And your show is going to be on what days?
Every Saturday.
Every single Saturday at what time?
11 a.m.
11 a.m. So 11 a.m. on Jess FM. Watch for Liza Rain and step into recovery.
And if you have anything in your life that you are struggling to recover from, tune in. Even if you are not a drug addict, if you are not an alcoholic, if you do not understand where I'm coming from, and you simply want to get, that story, and you want to, stop yourself ahead of time, tune in. You don't need to be a drug addict and an alcoholic to want to recover. Recovery happens, for most things. Anything you fall apart from in life, you need to recover from. So tune in. Doesn't matter if you're a drug addict or an alcoholic, or, just wanting to find maybe a little inspiration or hope. Tune in Saturday mornings at 11 a.m. Thanks, guys.